And like your question was, what keeps people from betting on themselves? If a crab tries to leave the trap, they'll literally tear him down, tear his legs off, and even kill him for trying to leave. Because when you get support initially until you start seeing success, if you don't realize, how much time you're spending with someone who's actually cutting you down, it's a silent killer behind the scenes of your belief. I want to be known for being one of the best recruiters for Christ.
Welcome to the Pillars of Purpose podcast. Today, I have a great friend, a nationally ranked podcast host, creator of Real Producers, one of the top real estate communities nationwide, a published author, and the underdog of the year for best keynote speakers. So if you're looking to book a keynote speaker for 2026, this is your guy. Welcome, Remington Ramsey.
Thanks, PJ.
Thanks for being on, brother. All right, so we're going to dive right in because the only speed on the odometer is 100 miles an hour. It's the only way that I know how to move. So I got a ton of questions for you. I want to get your insights. I want to extract your wisdom. So question number one, top of the list. You've worked with a lot of real estate agents. You've worked with a lot of entrepreneurs. What prevents people from betting on themselves? What is the mental barrier that prevents somebody from becoming an entrepreneur, becoming a real estate agent, becoming a loan officer, becoming an insurance agent? What do you think is that mental barrier that prevents people from taking that leap?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a great opening question. It's belief, really. I spoke. It's funny you started here because this was the topic that helped me get into real estate offices early on to speak on, because flashback, I got my start in real estate selling knives, which is a really weird way to do it. But I was selling Cutco knives to realtors basically. And that's a really weird thing to call somebody and ask when it comes to real estate. They're used to getting title reps and guys like you knocking down their doors with mortgages. I was trying to knock down their doors with knives. So what I started doing—
That's one way to cut your cloth. No pun intended.
There you go. Nice. So what I started doing was talking about like social media, but then what it led to was belief. And so I wrote this little ebook, and we can send it out to everyone who listens to this. It's on my website. It's free, but I basically broke it down into these different animals and what they taught us about belief. And like your question was, what keeps people from betting on themselves? So you're asking from the standpoint of what keeps people from like quitting their 9-to-5 to get into a type of
either going all in on business, starting the side hustle, making the move. Like just from your proximity and experience, what keeps people from making those decisions and taking those leaps?
So I keep the most influential books— I don't think you can see it right now— behind me, stacked. And every time I read a book that I feel like is in the I'm going to talk about this book a lot, I put it in the stack over here. And one of them is called Entrepreneurial Roller Coaster by Darren Hardy. I'll get it real quick. All right. So this one right here, have you read this?
No. It's funny that you said Darren Hardy. Because I literally just got a Darren Hardy book.
Publisher of Success Magazine. Anyway, he talks early on in one of the early chapters. He talks about crabs, the crab mentality, and he opens the chapter talking about how hard it is to catch these crabs because they're super cunning, super quick, but they're caught by the thousands every day because of one particular trait they hold, which is a very human trait. And so he describes the scene where you put this bait in the middle of this crab trap, and one crab will come in and another crab will see it, so they'll come in, and then a couple more crabs, and then pretty soon it's like crab Thanksgiving in there. They're all feeding on the bait. And so here's what happens, which is the crazy part though, is now that the crabs are in there, some of the other crabs join, and they're not even eating. They're just there because all the other crabs are there. And so pretty soon the trap fills up, the bait is completely gone, and none of the crabs leave because of the power of the herd. If a crab tries to leave the trap, they'll literally tear him down, tear his legs off, and even kill him for trying to leave.
The other crabs?
The other crabs. So he uses this analogy to talk about the fact that us as human beings are making decisions based on what everyone else does. So like the reason why we don't take a shot into the entrepreneur world is because everyone does a 9 to 5. It's the easy thing to do. And if what's really funny is when you get support initially until you start seeing success. So like everyone's like, you go girl, you got this, like, but then you start seeing success and it's a reflection of them. So what this is truly about the other person, whoever is dogging or hating the person who finds that success. Now, all of a sudden it's this giant mirror that I didn't step out into the entrepreneurial world. I didn't have enough cojones to do this, and they're making me look bad and feel bad about myself. So now I'm going to, lash out and make them feel bad. And I think roundabout way of answering your question is people want to avoid that type of tension, and they don't have enough belief to step out onto that crazy roller coaster. But the rewards are on the other side.
Bro, what's powerful about that is you think about the crab analogy, which I've never heard that. I love that. I'll never forget that for the rest of my life. People hear that and probably think their legs are going to get ripped off and they're going to die if they try to leave the cage. When in reality, even that's a false belief. It's like you're actually not a crab, you're a human being, and you can walk out of the cage. But they want to be able to hurt.
Where I take that one is like the biggest lesson that I took from that, which I don't even know if he goes into this on the chapter. Oh, no, I think he does. But like he basically talks about the difference between the people who actually take the leap and do it and the ones that are tearing you down are supposedly sometimes some of your biggest fans, some people that are like the closest to you, they actually love you and family. So like if I step into a scenario where like I don't have a base and I don't have all these extra things coming in from a normal 9 to 5 job, and I don't have insurance, and you're doing this, your family who loves you and wants what's best for you, they don't get it. And so they'll start cutting you down without knowing it. Like, is this right for you? Are you good at this? Are you sure this is what you want? And that negativity kind of feeds into this lie that maybe I shouldn't have done this. And so instead of silencing that, you let it slowly creep in. And so what I would suggest is really taking the 5 people that you spend the most time with very seriously. Like that every inspirational speaker has used that stat. You become the 5 people you spend the most time with. Well, do that in your personal life and your business, because in your personal life, if you don't realize, how much time you're spending with someone who's actually cutting you down, it's a silent killer behind the scenes of your belief into this business world. And so you have to have hard conversations with family sometimes. Like some people have cut out family, and I don't want to suggest that without knowing your situation, but I would bet most people need to have serious conversations with somebody in their life who's not sharing the vision.
All right, so that's a great thread to kick us off. So just to capitalize or memorialize your advice, if you're somebody that wants to take a leap, wants to break out from a 9 to 5 and bet on yourself in business, one strategy is to make sure the people you're spending the most time with, your core 5, are people that are going to pour life into you and not take you down. Is that correct?
Oh, 100%. I mean, this is a good life lesson regardless of if you're, called to be an entrepreneur or not. It's like, the 5 people you spend the most time with is something that could be applied to literally any category of what you're doing, just to make sure you're spending time with people. I think a lot of people are like, well, I want to spend time with my friend Joey because he's kind of down and I can bring him up. But I think what typically happens more so than not is Joey brings you down, especially if you have more Joeys than you do whoever is the one, Susie's, who are bringing you up. So really, really good names here.
So that inspires a good question. I had 15 questions, but I'm already getting the vibe. It's just going to be an organic conversation because you're inspiring other thoughts. So that's a great framework. The people that want to save victims or try to be rescuers, what do you think you need to have, or what season of life you need to be in, or how do you prepare yourself to actually be prepared to be the type of person that's rescuing your Susies or your Johnnies or whoever the name was of the person that's negative, versus like, so, and let me ask the question again, right? Because you have 2 options. You have, hey, I need to work on myself so that I can take care of others, versus I think I'm in a position where I can go and start pulling people up. How would you discern the difference between those 2 seasons and when it's time to start, going and hanging out with the tax collectors and the people that need to be saved versus saving yourself?
Well, I know your faith background, PJ, and we're like-minded in that. And I think that a biblical principle of godly counsel is where you start. And if you look at the makeup
Mm,
of where you're spending your time and who you're spending your time with, at the top needs to be your family and then wise godly counsel. Because if you find
mm,
that you're spending most of your time with someone who doesn't share your beliefs, that iron sharpens iron effect doesn't take place because you're getting confused about what they're actually sharpening. Like maybe they're helping you with the
wow.
business, but how are they helping you with your spirituality, with your walk? And I would argue that if you're sacrificing that to get better in the business, ultimately you're going to lose because that's not what this game is about. I mean, I believe that this life is meant for the next, not the one that we're currently in. And so
Amen.
that has to start there.
That-
And I learned that I've been very blessed. I have a group of friends that are all godly men. It's actually funny. We're in a fantasy football league together, and for years we just used the thread to dog each other about football, which became a ginormous waste of time. We still do that, but now over the last few years, we've spent time creating men's retreats and donating our time and
mm,
money to a worthy cause. So now the majority of our time is spent loving on each other and godly brotherhood, and then secondarily fantasy football. And that proved to be the winning recipe.
that's awesome, bro. As you said that, it gave me the delineation of your leadership team versus your employees or your support staff. It's make sure
Right.
that the leadership team are people that are the caliber of leaders that you need so that you can pour into the support staff. All right. So another question on things, all things entrepreneurship. What's been your toughest season as an entrepreneur, and what's been your season of the biggest momentum you've had as an entrepreneur?
Um, So, just quite candidly, this last season we came out of was my toughest season I've ever had as an
Mm,
entrepreneur. The company's already built. We already have the people. It's big. Everyone knows about it. And now we try to tackle something we've never done before. And why is the question. And it's the question that some of our franchisees in this case are still asking. Just to be candid, I mean, we basically grew a company, and I partnered with another company to bring what is now known as Real Producers into publishing. Is what really scaled the business because they were the printer and the distribution. And then so I was basically tasked with recruiting. So I was all about the people. Well, you grow it to 150 markets and now you have the people. And so they're sold on a certain vision. You do this thing, this is what Real Producers is about. We do a magazine and events, and when you do it in your local market, you'll make X amount of dollars and you'll change the world of real estate in your market. Yes, that has happened. That's happened for the last 11 years now. Well, the bigger vision is what is this one company, one brand all about? And is there a national vision? And since that isn't adopted by everyone in the company, it's a big bottleneck on actually performing something like a national event. And so the
mm,
last year of my life was the most stressful, I would say, top three at least. There
wow.
was another phase that was early on that was pretty stressful too, but it was good stress. I mean, we were just growing faster than we knew how to keep up. But so yeah, that would be a time
Bro,
where I learned a lot.
how interesting. You started with the entrepreneur roller coaster, and your toughest season piggybacks off your beginning season, which is after you did everything that you sought out to do, a tough season followed because you accomplished everything that you wanted to accomplish.
Well, it's because we didn't stop. I mean, it's like I can't remember what movie it was, but there's a movie line out there that says, "Why are we doing this?" And it's something big, like why are we going to the moon? Why are we?
Mm,
And the reason is because that's what we were born to do. We're born to be pioneers. We're born to do great things. God wants us to live a life and live it abundantly, and we're supposed to forge on. And that's a hard. That not everyone grasps that. Some people are very comfortable just living a very basic life, and I'm not dogging that lifestyle. I'm not saying that can't have it serve its purpose, but I do believe if you aren't using the talents and the calling that you have, if you're ignoring that, you will be missing out on a very fruitful life that God has for you. And I've experienced that
what
before.
what do you say to somebody that comes to you and says, I don't know what my calling is, or I'm not sure if I have a calling? How do you help redirect somebody when they feel like they're missing the purpose in their life, and they're just stuck? And maybe they want to get uncomfortable, but they just feel like there's no vision and they're just lost.
Yeah. It's like a question about God's will, right? This keeps coming up in my life right now. I'm writing a book on dreams.
Wow. Let's go.
It's a really cool. We won't spend a lot of time on this talking about it, but our next podcast I'll
Okay.
have a lot more for you. But
Okay.
dreams. I've carried around a dream journal basically for the last 15 years. No, 20 years of my life. I've carried around a dream journal
Wow.
everywhere I go. I'm just
That's
marking off
beautiful.
dreams. So I'm going to talk about the journey, and but one of the questions that comes up is when do I know to push versus the pivot? And that's
Yep.
a similar question to what you're asking. How do I know what my calling is? I don't have all the answers. Where my head first goes is what we've already talked about, which is who is speaking into your life. Because
Mm,
if you're asking that question, who are you asking that question to? Like, who are you surrounding yourself with? Like, if you're constantly like, delight yourself in the eyes of the Lord, and He will give you the desires of the heart. That's a verse that
mm,
I love because it starts with your relationship with God. Are you praying and seeking counsel in the living, breathing text before you ask somebody else, before you ask me or PJ? Because I
wow.
believe that God can speak directly to you. Now, that second piece of it, though, is that God uses people. God uses people
Mm,
to be delivers, the messengers, right? The Nathans of the world. So I think that if I had to answer that just straight up, I would say, what are you doing to search for answers in the good book? And then who are the people that you're asking? Because I guarantee you'll find directions. And if you start to go down one and the door is shut, you know, go down a different direction, like
bro, that's so
movement.
good. As you say that, a takeaway is, what is the relationship between the words you hear versus the word, right? Are you leaning too much on words versus the word? And also knowing whose you are. It's almost like if you were created by a Porsche manufacturer, but you thought you were a Prius, because you forget who created you and manufactured you and what is actually branded inside of your instruction manual. It's like, hey, bro, you're only going 20 miles an hour, but your odometer actually goes up to 240. You just need to press the gas pedal.
I
So
love it.
just don't forget who created you and whose
Porsche
you
versus
are.
Prius, I'm definitely stealing. I'm going to use that.
Bro, I'll take it all day long. That could be chapter 3. Um, All right, so we're going to transition a little bit, but I know this is a area in which you spend a lot of time and you've had a lot of success. What's the first step to developing a good reputation in your local market? So, to anybody that's listening to this, it could be anywhere across the United States. Hey, I just want to continue to build partnerships with my local market, and I'm trying to figure out, how do I build a good reputation in my local market, right? How do I create this natural sphere of influence, momentum? What would be your advice or insights on building a good reputation?
Yeah, show up. I mean, I've said it.
Mm,
This book behind me, Agent Allies, a little book I wrote, came out this year, has seen a lot of success in the real estate world, and there's a whole chapter that is dedicated to networking and how to grow your sphere, and it has very little to do with selling yourself. It has everything. And not to say that you shouldn't learn how to do that and you shouldn't get better at that. But the first step is being in the room. Like I've said it before, being
mm,
in the room is more important than being good at your job to get the initial deal, especially in real estate. Like if you're on the lender side and you're looking to build your business on calling on real estate agents, I mean, remember, agents aren't actually buying mortgages from you. They're partners, right? So
yep.
like there's a strategy to how you talk to someone who is opening up their Rolodex to you. It's different than just trying to sell a product to somebody. And so you are if you are always there and you're likable, you're going to attract people who want to be around you. And so I learned this the hard way because I remember I was selling knives. So I'd go into a sales rally and I'd like try to shake hands with every single person and ask them if what they give as closing gifts. And I just lost. I was losing, and thank God, certain people like took me aside and said, "This is how you do it." and just planting seeds about what you do, letting them ask, but knowing that you are a likable person, and regardless of what you sell, I'm going to enjoy being a part of what you do. I mean, that's ultimately why the magazine was successful initially. I had no business selling ad space. I had never done marketing before outside of my own knife marketing, but because I hustled so hard at the last thing, people saw how hard I worked and how I was likable. They enjoyed working with me. They basically said, whatever you're doing, we want to be a part of. So
Wow.
that's who you need to be. Are you someone where they're like, hey, we don't really care what you're selling. We just want to be a part of your network because it's going to be fun along the way. I mean, that's the first thing I say. There's a lot more, but that's the
No,
starter.
no, that's good. Show up and show up well. Bro, it reminds me of the difference between year 1 and year 5 of trying to build relationships with real estate agents in production. The first year, it's all mortgage language. And then at some point, I just started asking, how are your kids? Did you see who won the game? Did you check out this event? And you end up not even talking about the profession at all. And it leads to more leads that ever would have been generated versus when all you were talking about is mortgages. Like they don't actually care about mortgages. They
Yeah.
just want to have a relationship with somebody they like working with. And that was a
Yeah.
massive shift.
Yeah. I can see. I mean, it sounds like you had a very similar trajectory that I did.
Oh,
And I think everyone
absolutely.
goes
Like
through
I
that.
said, what I started with, the odometer is 100 miles an hour. So if you're going 100 miles an hour, you want to make sure you're getting off the right exit because otherwise you're like 2 hours from where you were supposed to be. All right. So I got another transition, but this is something I was curious about. So public speaking, right?
Yeah.
They say some people are more scared of public speaking than they are at a list of 1,000 things, right? Getting eaten in a cage of crabs, since we started with that analogy.
Mhm.
What does your journey look like of either developing the confidence, getting in a rhythm? Because you crushed the keynote for our American Pacific Mortgage Symposium to kick off the year. What does
Thanks,
that
man.
journey look like with identity, confidence, and just because I think that's a key skill a lot of people in this space want to develop and grow in. So walk me through the mental journey of Remington as a public speaker.
Yeah, this whole the buzzword of imposter syndrome has been reoccurring this year, especially. Like I've heard it all my life, but like this year it actually meant something.
Okay.
And I realized that you talked about how do you get in, like why is everyone fearful of speaking in public? And I think there's a very real thing in our generation of why someone would be even more scared to speak in public is that cancel culture. Like it's so easy to just
Mm.
cancel somebody. And when you are raw and real, when you're either writing or speaking, you're giving people a piece of who you are and allowing yourself to be
Mm.
judged. And if you really care what people think, this is the wrong business for you. Like if you if you care so bad about being popular, you're going to lose in this game because the second you say something off or funny or do something wrong, which we all will at some point, you're going to be canceled, and you won't know how to handle that, and then it's just game over anyway. But the imposter syndrome is funny because I think what helped me speaking early on is I realized someone said this to me before a message. I think back again when I was selling knives, and they said everyone in this room is not as good at you at doing this thing, and they want to be as good at you. So just tell them how you did this. And it was so simple. It was
Wow.
and I was like, okay, I'll just get up and tell them how I did it because I know how I did this. I'll just tell them exactly what I did. And then you start adding in humor and texture and all that kind of stuff. But if you're looking to get into speaking, start speaking about something you're really good at to people who aren't as good at that thing, who want to know how to, I mean, it's just so basic, right? But like that's how
Bro,
you
that
get
is
into it.
such a simple framework and so powerful. Speaking at what you're good at that other people aren't. Like, come on.
Yeah, or
Bro,
someone
it's
who
like
wants to learn more.
I just heard this quote, and you might know a quote from Rory Vaden, who I just like started getting into his world with some of his content. But it was people don't pay for coaching for information; they pay for coaching for organization and application. And that blew my mind because
Yeah.
all of your favorite speakers and favorite brands, all the information's for free. The only reason there's a cost associated is because people want to learn how to actually implement it and organize it. So
I knew Rory
I
was going
love
to be a
that,
good
bro.
connection for you, man. I was really excited to get you in that small group room with Rory. He's next level.
Bro. Oh, bro, I forgot. That was life changing.
Yeah.
You're the one that introduced me to Rory at your event in the small
Y-
group.
You know what? So the book you're talking about where he wrote that in is called Wealthy and Well Known. It was the one that just came out like a week before he came and spoke at our event. And then that's when I
Wow.
introduced you to him. Another quote in that book that I think is really good for what we're talking about is you are uniquely positioned to serve the person that you once were. You're uniquely positioned to serve the person that you once were. So like just going back to what we're talking about getting into speaking, like who can you speak in front of? Well, if you've mastered a skill or if you've done something and you want to tell people how you did it, talk to people who haven't done it yet or aren't as good at you at doing that thing yet. And so that imposter syndrome, by the way, the imposter syndrome, especially in speaking, is sometimes. So I was thinking about this. I was listening to a podcast by Alex Hormozy, and as he was talking, I was like, you know what? Some people should have imposter syndrome. If you have imposter syndrome, maybe it's because you haven't done the thing enough. Like if you're trying to get up and talk about it and you're like stumbling over your words because you don't really know what you're talking about, it's because you haven't done it enough. Like maybe you haven't made enough mortgages to get up and talk about it. Maybe you haven't
think
sold
that
enough
person
things.
stops and needs to go back and do the work, or is
Do
there
the thing. Yeah. Yeah,
I
whatever
like
you want to
that.
speak on, make sure you know what you're talking about. Because I mean, especially like social media, like people will get up and they'll start doing these talking head videos and they'll run out of content. So then they'll just start commenting on things they see. And then they'll watch it back a couple weeks later and they'll be like, I don't even believe that. Like I was just talking. I'm just saying stuff. Like, no, go back and do the thing. Beat the craft. Like maybe you shouldn't be speaking yet because you don't have the life lessons to talk about it or you don't have the skills. Like go back and do the skill. But if you are getting into speaking though, I would just say like sometimes the imposter syndrome is not necessarily being good at the thing. You just don't know how to talk about being good at the thing. And so like if you're great at selling mortgages, but no one's taught you how to tell people about it, maybe that's what you need to study. You're an imposter of speaking, not of mortgages.
Wow. That's good, bro. I think that can apply to a lot of things because I think there's a lot of people that have unique gifts and talents and have had a lot of success in the marketplace. But you're right, they haven't learned the strategy and how to document, educate, entertain, encourage
Yeah.
people based on what they do.
It's a whole new game. It's like
What?
marketing. Like if you're good at selling, but you don't know how to tell people you're good at selling, you might think you're good at marketing too, just because you're good at selling, but you're not. Like you got to learn the marketing game too, and that's what we teach our clients about. Is like, hey, you're good at that. Let us help you tell people.
All right, so another transition where I could pull like every thread that we're starting, but I'm gonna really try to just knock out these chapters of this episode. Um, Walk me through the journey of publishing a book because I think that's another thing, right? There's all these things that people will have on their list for 100 years, and then they go to the grave, and maybe they still get a well done, good and faithful servant, but there's still a part of them that didn't get to accomplish some of these things that they wanted to accomplish. So what does it take for somebody to publish a book?
Okay, so I'm gonna go back to my book stack. I'm gonna encourage
Yeah.
you guys to like get a stack of like 5 to 10 books that have you track back to some ideas that have really helped you along in your business journey. This one right here, published by Chandler Bolt, who was also at our conference, by the way. Did you have a chance to meet Chandler?
I
He
popped by his
spoke.
table. I didn't meet Chandler, but I met his team.
So Chandler's a friend, really cool guy. Wrote a book called Published. This book is fun. It's actually really well written, but it's a step-by-step guide of how not only to write a book but to get it published. And he wrote it because a lot of people were going the traditional route of going with getting published by a big publishing company, but then you don't own the rights to your own book. You don't make really any money from that. You just get your book out there, and sometimes not even that. And so he's like,
Wow.
okay, so he founded selfpublishing.com, and it's a step-by-step guide. You can pay for them to coach you. You can just do what the book says. So my brother-in-law and I, we committed to publishing our books in the same year. And so we got together every Friday at a hookah bar of all places. We were trying to be like the modern
Let's
day
go.
C.S. Lewis and J.R. Tolkien.
Yeah, I
So
like it.
got together every Friday to write. And I ended up hiring Chandler's team to coach me. I spent like, I don't know, a lot of money, but I made it all back on how to launch the book. And my brother-in-law just read his book and did what it said. And both worked. We both launched our book.
Wow.
And so I would say the first step, one of the steps in the book that Chandler teaches is if you're serious about writing and it's one of your dreams to like publish a book, is to do a 30-day challenge where you write for a half hour or an hour, you choose, for every single day for 30 days. It might be 60 days. I think it was 60 days. 60 days straight of writing for a half hour every single day, something for your book. And by the end, you forced yourself that many hours to actually have something that's like the basis for a book. And I'm talking like I committed to this challenge and I had to write during, like, it was Halloween night, so my kids are getting late with candy.
Wow.
A couple like Thanksgiving we
It showed
hosted.
you were serious, bro.
I was serious.
You're willing
So
to go
like,
through the storm.
yeah, I mean, there was like nothing came up where I was like, I committed to writing for at least a half hour. So that will kickstart it. But there's lots of other things. I would highly recommend reading published.
Okay. All right. So, guys, if anybody listening to this wants to publish a book, go pick up a copy of Published by Chandler Bolt. We'll be sure to add a link in the show notes below. And then hopefully negotiate a royalty deal for Remington for putting everybody on the Chandler's book.
That's right. He already owes me so much, but we'll tag that on. No, I'm just kidding. I tell you what, like I called him after. So somebody read my book, and so the book Agent Allies is basically my journey, how to build your business calling on real estate agents. Okay. So it's perfect for title reps, painters, mortgage lenders, everyone who's trying to call on agents to build their business. And it's 10 chapters on how to do that. A lot of the stuff, tackling a lot of the questions that you're asking, PJ. One person got a hold of my book because they heard about it on a podcast like this. They read it, and at the end, they got a hold of my team and signed up in our local market and ended up doing a deal that paid 3 times over what I spent to launch the book. And that was just one deal.
Wow.
And so a lot of times what keeps people from investing into a book is what will happen on the back end. Now that was money, that was financial. But if you have something that you're trying to get out into the world, and maybe someone comes to Christ because of something you write, that's infinitely more exciting than, the money value. So like if you have something to put on pages and you're worried about like the back end, I would challenge you to get it out there.
That's so good, bro. All right. So 2 forks in the road that were just created from your talk track that I want to touch on both. So one is, we haven't actually ever addressed this together, but I'm assuming you're a personal development guy based on the stack of influential books and just knowing who you are, that's been an influence in your journey. So tell me, when is it the right time to invest in myself financially with a coach, a mentor, a mastermind, a course, versus when is it the time to just go study, and maybe I don't need to have, a C-suite of paid people in my life? Like, how have you kind of navigated that as you've gone through your journey, and talk to me whether, it could be anybody, business owner, real estate agent, loan officer, and I'm trying to discern what's the right amount of coaching, what's the right amount of personal development, what should I use for free, what should I pay for? Just talk to me about that.
I don't think there's ever a bad time to invest in yourself ever. How much you invest, I get that question. I understand why you would say that, because you could spend a lot of money and at the end of the year be like, I don't think I quite should have spent that money to get the same. Because YouTube University and books, it depends on how you learn. Like if you're someone who can read something and do that thing, then start there. I'm typically not. That's why if you look at the difference between Brett, can you see me? I can't see my hands.
Yeah.
So if you look at Brett,
my
brother-in-law, Brett read the book, he picks up the book, and then he starts doing the steps. I did the first step. I did step 1 where I write for 60 days. But then step 2 was like something online. I'm like, yeah, I'm just not going to do that. So I know that about myself. So I'm going to pay someone else to do that because I've got bigger priorities, even though I want to launch this book. So I think you need to pay people to do the things that you're unwilling to do if you want to get the results that you want to get. And so,
wow, hold on, capture that right there. Pay people. I'm going to totally butcher this, but I'm just going to regurgitate it back. Pay people to help you do the things you're unwilling to do to get you the results that you need to get.
Yep.
Okay. All right. That's an official Remington Ramsey quote coming live to you on the Pillars of Purpose podcast. I also think know thyself, right? Because bro, as you're talking, I'm thinking back to the quote, know thyself. Like, you got to know what is your learning style. What do you need? It's like, do I need a personal trainer to get a 6-pack, or do I just need to set an alarm and wake up? Like, so That's a good
Yeah,
thread.
so
Okay.
exactly. Figure out what you're unwilling to do and pay for that area. And I think so. It took me a long time to pay for so I couldn't afford in my head. I couldn't afford an assistant, and I was just found myself doing all the things. I think this is a pretty common thing. I'm sure you've spoken about this on stage. Most of us who finally bought into getting an assistant have spoken about how long it took us to do that.
I'm like, bro, what was I doing with my life before I had
Right,
an assistant? Like,
right. So
what
I'm
was I
like,
doing?
I, I I think about the not meaningless, but like the tasks that weren't worth my time, but they were worth the time of somebody else on my teams. Because everyone has to start somewhere. So at one point, every one of those tasks was worth my time. But then there came
Yes.
a point where it was no longer worth my time, and I'm still doing that task. And I let hiring a full-time assistant scare me. And so finally, I just hired a part-time assistant. And what's crazy is what started as like 5 to 8 hours immediately went to 20 hours, and then within a year they were full time. And so that just tells me that I waited way too long to get into that game, and I was holding myself back. And so like that's kind of, I don't even know what you asked, but like
Well, it goes back to the origin of what we even started with is it all goes back to belief. Believe you're worthy, believe it's worth it. But I mean, it's belief, belief, belief. All right, I'm gonna ask two more questions. I legitimately have a list of questions I could sit here all day, but I'm gonna try to stay on task. So I got two more questions for you. And then a dozen questions we'll circle back to on another podcast somewhere in the
sounds good.
future. All right, so non-negotiables. 2026, what does Remington Ramsey try to stick to for non-negotiables? Husband, father, entrepreneur, speaker, author. At a basic level, when it's snowing, it's storming, and Philip Rivers is coming back into play,
Oh
and
no.
your quarterback roster is completely falling
Oh, it's
apart.
going
What
so
does
well
Remington
until you
Ramsey still
mention my
stay
beloved
focused
Colts.
on for non-negotiables?
Um, I I am best. So I'll be a little real and vulnerable with you. I have
Yeah.
OCD.
Okay.
And people with OCD, typically when you hear someone who has OCD, you're thinking of like they rearrange their cars, they flip the lights off 2 or 3 times before they go to bed, and that is a version of OCD. That's not what I have. OCD at its core is a brain disorder that has you hyperfixate on things that are probably not true. The best way I can describe it, and I'm going somewhere with this, is like if you know how
Yeah.
like you're standing on a tall building and you're afraid of heights, you look over, you're like, I should jump off. And it's like a weird thought you have. And normal people would
Yeah.
be like,
All the
why did I
time.
think that? And then you move on. I can't
Yep.
move on from that thought. I'll think about that for the
Mm.
rest of the week. Why did I think that thought? And then I'll start beating myself up and ruminate. And it could like people who haven't gotten a hold of their OCD will literally um, ruminate and basically just wreck their days and even weeks. I have friends that are like this. Okay, so for me, starting with the knowledge that I am different than you for that one very fact,
Mm.
I have to work out every single day.
Mm.
This is true for everybody, by the way, but because I have OCD, this is what I apply it to. If I don't work out every day, by the third day, I won't have sweat. My body won't have done the things it needs to do to get out of my head, and so my mental
Mm.
health suffers. And I didn't realize
Mm.
that until a couple of years ago, and I linked the mental to the physical stuff that therapists don't really focus on because therapists make more money if they can help you stay in your own head. And I've had some great
Mm.
therapists before, but like ultimately they're helping you with your head, and very few of them are really asking you what you're eating and how healthy you are. So you asked that question, what's a non-negotiable? For Remington to be the best husband and dad, I have to work out and sweat 30 minutes a day, every day, so that I'm being the example, but also because my body and my mind need it.
Bro, that's incredible. So I was on a call yesterday, and again, by the grace of the Lord, I don't even know how I get on these calls, but I'm on a call with Gary Brecka in one of
Oh,
these faith-based
yeah.
masterminds, and he says, I'm only going to say this to this group, but he says 90% of health really just comes down to three things, and all of the other cold plunge, sauna, supplements, all the stuff we sell and promote is like the other 10% or maybe 5%.
Mm.
It's consistent movement and exercise, a whole food diet, and a consistent sleep schedule. He said if you did those three things consistently, you could probably live to 100 years old without ever taking a supplement, getting in a cold
Yeah.
plunge, or getting in a sauna. And I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah. Not to take away
bro,
from some of those things that are supportive, but they are supportive.
yeah, support systems.
That's it.
All
They're
right.
not the
So,
staples.
non-negotiable, moving every day. So final question for episode 1, and we can have a decade-long saga from here. When it's all said and done for Remington Ramsey, you're at the last day of your career in the marketplace. You've just published your 8th book. You've given your 2000th speech at your dream stage, and you said, you know what, I'm hanging it up. And the only thing I'm doing now is fantasy football and pouring love on my guys and and donating my money to worthy causes. What does Remington Ramsey want to be known for?
Oh, wow. So I ask a similar question. I actually wrote this every time I launched a franchise. I would write them a letter, and I would end with a quote that an entrepreneur here in Indy once told me. He says, "They never put your net worth on your tombstone." And I asked him what he wanted to be known for, and he said integrity, without a doubt, like immediately. And I thought about that, and that's not a bad answer. That's not a bad answer, and I'm sure in a roundabout way that can get to my answer. But without a doubt, I have an audience of one, and that one is God the Father, Jesus Christ. And so if God is pleased and says, "Well done, my good and faithful servant," then I will have done what I was supposed to do. And every other answer that I've found to be cute or like unique and like try to give you like a soundbite, like
Yeah.
the more I try to be unique, the more I make it about me, and the more I make it about me, the harder I struggle in this life. And when I make it not about me and I make it about serving, the way Jesus did, somehow I realize that like everything else becomes a little bit easier. And so I committed my life to the Lord years ago, and that doesn't mean I'm perfect. That means there's some times where I'm not serving Him, and I struggle. So at the end of this, I want to be known for being one of the best recruiters for Christ.
Let's go, bro. What an amazing answer. Audience of one and one of the best recruiters for Christ. Bro, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your
Thanks for having
friendship.
me, man. Great
Yeah, bro,
question.
super good.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
unlike any podcast I've been on, and that's a testament to you. So keep it up.
Thank you, bro. I appreciate you. All right, guys, I will put all of the links to connect with Remington Ramsey, to get a copy of his book, to let you know where he's going to be speaking. So thank you so much for tuning into the episode, and I hope you guys have a blessed day.